Hello and welcome to another short video. This time I thought we would look at encounters since it comes up now and again on Discord. So we've got a little story entry here which we've prepared in advance, which with some box text for the players indicating that they're creeping up on a room and they're seeing some goblins and some DM information. And we've also linked a map to the story entry. So let's just open up that map. And we can see that it's just a standard map here. And this is the room that we are going to have our encounter in. So we need to prepare our encounter, and so we click on the Encounters button, and then as usual on the Edit List, and then on the New tab. And this gives us a new blank encounter template. Now, if I'm doing this kind of thing, then I like to keep the name of the encounter the same as the story name. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste the name of the story entry to which this encounter relates. You don't need to do that, but it means that you can find your encounters more easily if you've got lots of them. And then we need to populate this encounter, so let's click on our NPCs tab. We've already drilled down to goblins, and let's drag a goblin in and drop it onto the encounter template. And you can see now that a few things have opened up. The first is that the little token here on the left hand side shows us what the goblin's token is, and then under here we have a row. There's only one in it at the moment, but there's a row of goblins, and it tells us that this is the placement row. And we can see at the moment that because there's a little icon here, that this goblin hasn't been placed on the battle map as yet. Further along we can see that there's an ID tag, and currently it's green, which means that the item or the goblin is identified. So when this is placed on the map, the players are going to see that this is a goblin because it'll tell them that that's what it is. If we wanted to not have that happen, then we can click on this button and the goblin is now unidentified, and so the players aren't going to actually be able to see that it'll come up as an unidentified creature. And then the next little button here, which is black, is the faction button. And if we click on this, we can cycle through this. So we can make the NPCs here friendly, or we can make them neutral, or we can make them hostile, or we can go back to the default. Now, the default is black, and that basically means that this faction is nothing until it's placed on the combat tracker, at which point it will automatically become hostile. But if you wanted to make the encounter a friendly one, or initially friendly, or neutral, then you can do that in the encounter here. So when this encounter is placed on the combat tracker, in this case, because this is green, then the NPCs in this encounter would start off as being friendly. And the same applies for neutral. And you can also leave it at hostile if you want, but unless you've got a very good reason for changing it, then you can just keep it as the black little skull icon there. And then the next button along is simply a link to the NPCs, which you can click on, and then this gives you the character stat, the NPC stat sheet. And so that gives you access to the other tab, and also of course any portraits or whatever that you might have in that particular tab. So back to our encounter then. One goblin isn't enough, so let's make it 5. As soon as we click on this box here, we can edit it and add in the number of goblins that we want, and we can now see that there are now 5 goblins in the placement line. Now we can continue adding more to this, so let's add in a goblin boss, let's say, and we just drag and drop as usual, and we can make this unidentified as well. And the same thing applies whenever we drag anything in. All these buttons appear for each row. So you could, for example, easily make the goblin boss a different faction from the goblins. This would be handy if there was maybe, say, some NPC prisoners or something like that. You can make them a different faction from the actual combatants. So that's really our encounter more or less done. The only thing we want to do now is just to click on the refresh buttons up here. Either one will do, and that refreshes the challenge rating and the XP for the encounter. And that's essentially it. We've more or less done the encounter, and we can drag that now into our story entry and just drop it in there. We can then give it a title. We can take out that if we like, make this bold, tidy it up, make it nice and pretty. And that's it. However, it's not particularly useful just to have the encounter just like this. We obviously want to place the encounter on the map. This is part of the preparation that you would do before the PCs get here. And we do this using the placement row. So here's our map. It's already got a grid and everything like that on it, which you will need. And we just drag and drop each of these little icons and drop it where we want it to be on the map. Now our story here has 3 goblins round the table, but it has another goblin boss and some more goblins hiding in a corner. So let's place the 3 goblins that the player characters are going to see, and then we can put these other ones somewhere in a corner where the NPCs or the players aren't going to see them. Now, one thing I didn't mention was that the icons here for goblins and goblin bosses are exactly the same, and you can change these tokens if you wanted to. So if we go into our tokens library here and just here we go, we've got some more goblins. So if we wanted to change the goblin icon here for the boss, then we can do so just by dragging and dropping onto that token. We can also do the same for the standard goblins if you wanted to. So these icons or these tokens will change, or will, when we place this on the combat tracker, these will be the tokens that are used rather than the standard tokens. This doesn't affect the actual token on the NPC sheet. Simply it changes the token for this particular encounter. So our encounter's done, and we can now close this encounter off, and when we do so you see that the all the tokens etc. disappear from the map, and so we're ready really to play. So we'll pause slightly and set up the map for an actual encounter. Okay, we've set up our map, we've put the mask on. Here's our 2 player characters here, and they're moving in this direction here, and they can see into this room, and this is all of the area that they can see in this room at the moment. So we can now place our encounter. So we just open it and then click on the little icon here, add encounter to combat tracker, and there it is. Now this is the DM view, of course, so this is what the Dungeon Master is able to see when the encounter is placed. If we have a look at the player's view at this stage, the players don't see anything either on the combat tracker or on the map. So that means we need to make the NPCs visible to the players. And if we zoom in slightly here, we can see that goblin number 2, 1 and 4 are the ones which are visible. So if we look at the combat tracker here, we can see that there's a big button up here which says show all NPCs, but you can also see that next to each individual NPC there is a visibility button, and this is how the Dungeon Master makes things visible on the map and on the combat tracker. So we want to make numbers 1, 2 and 4 visible. So 1, 2 and 4. So we can see now that in the Dungeon Master screen, these have lit up, and there's the little eye icons here. If we have a look at the player side, then we can see that the players have we've got unidentified creatures, 1, 2, and 4. Perhaps a slight giveaway in the sense that the NPC or the characters must know that there is at least a third goblin somewhere, although there are options which you can do to mitigate this. And so this is what the players can actually see. They can't see the goblins which are sitting in this area here. Only the Dungeon Master knows that they exist. So when the player rushes in to deal with the goblins, they're going to get a surprise, because once they're able to see this area of the map here, then we can then reveal the other goblins which are hiding behind the corner. So I think that's about it. Well, one thing, of course, you can do, as you can see, the Dungeon Master has the option here of making these creatures identified via the combat tracker by clicking on this button. So if we were to click number 1 here, so wrong thing. If we were to click number 1 here, then all of the goblins that were unidentified have now become identified. You'll see that the goblin boss, because it's a different NPC, it remains unidentified, but the others have now become goblins, and this is also noticeable on the player screen. The goblins are now identified, and but the boss is remaining unidentified. So I think that's really it for encounters. I don't think there's very much else that there is to tell you. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers for now.